Okay, Rick, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight. Just really appreciate you speaking up for us. And a lot of things was being said, of opposition. And we found out some things, just what our County Auditor is saying, things that we didn't know. Okay?
Yeah.
And so it's been very educational. With us, we've got an organization called We the People of Harvey, and I just want to ask, you mentioned something about other funds
Yes.
that we have in the legislative, finance.
Yes.
What are they?
So you'll hear a lot of the opponents of Measure 4 talk about, oh my gosh, this is 40% or 50% of the general fund. And it's a common trick that legislators and other elected officials have been using for years. Governor Burgum used it when he was trying to get credit for cutting spending, but he was only talking about spending from the general fund, even though overall spending increased significantly. So they use this trick to talk about general fund because for most states, the general fund really is what they say it is, which is like pretty much all of the spending. In North Dakota, we have a lot of funds we can spend from. But in addition to the general fund, the biggest one is called the Strategic Investment and Improvement Fund, SIF, S-I-I-F. And that fund has it was initially designated for some special one-time projects, and then the rest was supposed to go back into legacy. But because of the habits, the spending addiction of the legislature, they did away with the moving to legacy. They kept putting more money into the fund, and that's why I say it went up. What did we say? Oh, the legacy fund went up. The SIF fund. When it started in 2011, it was about $250 million. It has grown by 1,200% since 2011. The SIF fund has grown by 1,200% since 2011, okay? So 12, 13 years. That's how much money they're shoveling into the SIF fund, into this special fund that they're trying to convince you and me that they can't use. Now, out of that fund, they paid for school buildings that weren't necessarily needed. They gave $140 million free giveaway to energy company, $2 million for businesses as a handout to hire foreign workers, $95 million to a nonprofit, a private nonprofit, with their sole purpose is to hand that money out to other private businesses. We go on and on and on and on. For them to say that money can't be used is so dishonest, it's hard to even describe. So that money is available. So that's when you ask about what's this deal about the special funds, general funds, we can use them both. They need to be considered, and to say the general fund is all is totally wrong.
Okay. Well, that's kind of what we're finding out all over the place. There's money being stuffed away.
Oh gosh, the state has so much money. We are overspending $4 to $5 billion more than we should be every biennium. And this replacement is between the real number that I know and that the Legislative Council lawyers say is closer to $2.5 billion. The legislature purposely inflated it to $3 billion to try and scare people. But regardless of which way you cut it, $2.5 or $3 billion, obviously there's enough in that $4 to $5 billion of extra that they can pay for it. They don't want to. They definitely don't want to. That's why they're trying to scare everybody.
Well, and that's what we've heard. A lot of scare tactics.
Oh, yes.
I'm glad what you want to go over what you had talked about tonight about we're still going to have our special assessments, but the money needs the places like for the city and for the county and the district, we don't really get paid for the district, but for the schools and stuff.
Yes.
Well, I want to back up a moment. We've been studying the Constitution, and we believe that in our Constitution, we're not supposed to. Our government is supposed to be supporting the schools.
Oh, yes.
And not
Yeah.
this
Yeah, according to the
extra.
North Dakota Constitution, the legislature, the state, should be funding K-12 education, period. Yes.
Okay, so where are they getting this? That, oh no, it doesn't say that. That was even stated tonight.
Yeah, well, if you want to, you can try and read it and interpret it like there's a little wiggle room. So I will say
But it's going back to the federal papers of what they were talking about, what they wanted, right? Is that an explanation, or it's our
going
bill?
back to not necessarily the federal papers, but the original constitutional convention for the state back in 1889 or thereabouts.
Okay, so that's really what we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
That gives us the definition.
Yeah. To get the legislature back on course to paying for K-12 education, I think is a great idea. We should. The nice thing is that when this measure passes, at that moment, the state is going to be paying 100% of K-12 education, right? Because they're picking up everything through the 2025 budget.
Okay, so explain that again. That was the point that I wanted. I didn't know how to ask that question, but so that when we put this on YouTube, people can hear exactly where this money. Everybody's scared. We're not going to have any money.
So it's so important to know that what the opposition tries to present is, hey, your property taxes pay for these things. If we get rid of property taxes, these things aren't paid for. Well, first off, we pay for these things and we choose to do it with property tax. When we get rid of property tax, we can choose to do it with something else.
But you were talking about hands being tied, like for the ambulance service.
Right. So right now, the state has so many restrictions on property tax. So when we get away from property tax, we are saying that no longer are we going to do a one-size-fits-all, because the same pages and pages of restrictions and limitations the state imposes on all of the locals, they are the same for Fargo as they are for Harvey, as they are for Dickinson. It's all the same, and that's not really ideal. So what we do is say no longer is there valuation-based property tax. That means those pages of restrictions that the state has no longer apply. We heard tonight the lady regarded from the ambulance. They are maxed out at their mill levy. And she's worried about increasing costs, and the state will not let them increase their mill levy. Now, some people might say, great, and then they can't increase tax, but the point is, the state is controlling them and restricting them. So when they say, oh, we're going to lose local control, they actually have very little control. When we move away from the state-imposed restrictions on property tax, and we say, you city, you county, however is best for the citizens that live in your community, that's how you're going to raise the revenue you need above the amount that the state is replacing, which is everything in 2025. You figure out how it's best to raise that revenue from your people. And because it's that type of tax, it's not a property tax, it's more transparent, so the citizens can come to the meetings. It's very easily understandable. I don't know, I doubt many people here or anywhere for that matter really understand how mill levies work. Not really. And so this makes it much easier to understand, and I think because it's more understandable, citizens have a voice. When they have a voice, they have more ability to say no to that taxation, whatever it might be. I've had 3 elected officials across the state over this past several months tell me individually, separate occasions, that the biggest thing that concerns them about this measure is it will be easier for citizens to say no to a tax increase. Literally.
It's putting the power back to the people.
It is. Yes. So it actually gives more control to local elected officials than they have now, and it gives much more control, the most important local control, which is to the citizen.
And that's what it's supposed to be.
That
It's
is.
not supposed to be state control.
Yes.
It's to the counties.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do you have anything to...
Can you address the comment about that 80% of the tax is paid by these big corporations, like in our...
Well, so what they're doing is looking for cherry-picking numbers to scare people. The biggest thing for people to know is everything that's paid to the county and all the subdivisions is getting replaced by the state, okay? And that means that everything you're paying, you keep in your pocket. Now, what they want to do is have you forget about all the money that you get to keep and what you're going to do with it, and they want you to think about an evil corporation. Well, we don't want them to get the break. So forget that you're getting an amazing opportunity. We don't want them to have an opportunity. So what they'll do is say, Well, the 3 largest or 5 largest, they'll pick a certain number, and they look for out-of-state interests, out-of-state businesses, and say we don't want them to have a break. The problem is, in most cases, those big out-of-state corporations are already getting a break of some kind. Many of them get a break in the beginning to say for 10 or 15 years they don't have to pay any property tax. The other way that the big corporations get a break is through the legislature when they do the big money giveaways. All these programs they give out, especially the Department of Commerce, which should be eliminated, they're giving out hundreds of millions of dollars to businesses. One of the legislators asked for a research and memo on how much is given to businesses. Over $700 million was given to businesses in the 2023 legislature. $700 million over of your tax dollars being handed to private businesses. So what they are doing is talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're saying, no, you don't want them to have a break. What they really mean is we want to be in control of the breaks they get because that makes us powerful.
Well, we're doing a constitution study, and through Chris Hall.
Yes.
And it's all trying to get the power back to the people.
Absolutely. This does that.
That we have more say.
Much more. This measure is absolutely in line with a we the people mentality. Absolutely. There's no question about it. How can you have agency? How can you be in control when the government taxes you in a way that you don't understand, you have very little control over, and they can take away your house? Tell me how you have control in that, right? We have to move away from that.
Well, it was just stated that tomorrow for our county commissioners meeting, there's 13 properties here in Wells County.
Yep.
And we did we pulled what taxes went for the last 10 years, just properties that was lost due to taxes, and that was
243.
in 10 years in our county.
Wow.
And that means city and all lands, the whole county. And now we've got another 13 coming up on the...
Yeah, that's
But
it's
it's
not right.
a lot faster with the way prices are and everything.
Yep.
Well, do you have any... Okay. Do you have
Okay.
anything else to add to...
I'll reiterate a couple of things. There's no loss of funding. Absolutely none. The state must replace every single dollar, and they have no strings attached. They can't attach strings. It's this measure for the people forces them to replace, so you can keep in your pocket what you're paying in property tax with no strings attached. So they have no greater control. The local entities, cities and counties and schools, will continue to make their own budgets. So the state has nothing to do with the budget. Everything when they talk about the state's in control, you have to go to Bismarck to beg for money, completely 100% false.
Yep.
100%.
Okay, also they're trying to say that whatever budget you have now, it will not increase each year.
That's absolutely false too. One of the opposition that I debate with likes to say your budget will be frozen in the Constitution. No, here's what's in the Constitution when this passes. The floor of what the state must replace to every political subdivision. Nothing to do with the budget. The locals make their budget. Now, for better or for worse, this measure does not control big spending local elected officials. But it makes it easier for the people to control it. But if you've got big spending local elected officials, even when this passes, they can skyrocket their budget because, why? They're in control of it. But now people are in better control, so they can say no to those crazy increases. So there is no state control. There is no budget being frozen. That is an outright. It's either a terrible misunderstanding, or possibly it's a lie.
Can you address his comment that if this ends up being a terrible idea, we can't undo it?
Well, he likes to say that, but you notice that he backed away when he asked the legislators, like, how hard will it be to fix? And they said, well, it would be a vote of the people at the next election. And he immediately backed away because that's what it would take. If this turned out to be terrible, the sky is falling like they're saying, here's what would happen. The legislature, because you wouldn't even have to go through a signature gathering process. It could just go boom, boom, boom. Because look at measures 1, 2, and 3. Those that are on the ballot in November, those didn't get signatures. The legislature just voted and boom, they go on the ballot. So the legislature could put on the ballot to put property tax back on anytime they want, and the people would need to vote on it.
Gotcha.
It's that easy. Now, it might be very hard once people realize how amazingly good this measure is, and they're keeping the $1, $2, $3, $4, $5,000 in their pocket every single year. I don't think they're going to vote to put property taxes back.
Right.
But that's how easy. Technically, what his point is, this is. You can't undo this. Oh, you can so easily, as your legislators pointed out.
Okay, that is good to know, because we asked that question in our meeting, because we started going over the ballot, the measures, just to understand them. And we wondered, how did those 3 get on? We didn't see no signatures.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so whatever comes from the legislators, they can put on the ballot.
Yep. And it's a I'm forgetting the term, but you'll see on there it's a legislative measure instead of a initiated measure.
Okay, look for that word, legislator.
There's 3 of them.
There's
The first three.
3.
Number 4 and 5 are initiated measures. Yeah, number 2 is horrible, terrible,
Yep.
terrible.
It's
If
bonding our hands again.
If number 2 passes, what it does is it changes the initiated measure process, which is supposed to be for the people, and makes it impossible for the people, and makes it a little bit harder for the ultra-rich and out-of-state big money interests. So what it does is it changes our initiated measure so that it can only be done by the super wealthy out-of-staters. So I would rather do away with the initiated measure altogether than pass number 2. Because the last thing we want to do is give up the power of the people and hand it to corporations. No.
Well, any more questions?
Okay.
I get a question.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome.
Appreciate
It was
this.
my pleasure.
Donation, where do you want it?